the psychedelic community too, I think, right? Harm reduction has been proven to prevent death, injury, disease, overdose, and substance misuse by offering all the things we just said, and by having a space where people can talk about these things and ask questions. And all this information I sourced from the CDC, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Service Administration, the San Juan Basin Public Health. I've been working closely with them. They're starting a program in Durango just recently, so I've been working with them really close. So let's go into what is an overdose, right? An overdose happens when too much of a drug overwhelms the brain and it interrupts your body's natural drive to live, right? There's some factors that can increase ODs, and some of them are purchasing drugs from the street or the black market, right?
Which is like always, all the time.
You can, by mixing it with other substances, like doing multiple drugs at once, right? That plays a factor. If you're suffering from depression or other mental illnesses, you know, some, like Badi was saying, like sometimes it doesn't mix well. Psychedelics don't mix well with people. So if maybe even if you are suffering a mental illness, that's why it's important to go through this with a person, with a therapist or a trusted friend, just somebody to go on the journey with you, to make sure that you're making progress and not going backwards to wanting to harm yourself or somebody.
And so what I was trying to get to as well is it's not just necessarily that, like, you know, that the drug doesn't mix well with with a disorder that one would have in their own brain, right? It's just that how able is that person in that mindset going to be able to handle the effects afterward, right? How are they going to be able to process the information afterward? Are we going to be led on the right direction?
Exactly.
I mean, it's not really known, like through ECC studies and whatnot, where these people come out and there's like a really, really small, tiny chance that anyone has a bad time. But you're working with, you know, like well-regulated, highly screened people who are generally getting paid, college students, and the optimal health, etc., are their essential focus group, right? So they don't really have a lot of cases on the outlying situations, things of that nature. So it's understanding previously, how is it going to change me? What should I expect? To this is my experience, to how do I integrate that, and how do I move on carrying that with me, realizing that there's something shifted inside me. So anyway, sorry, I just wanted to interject there that it comes in from beforehand and after the fact. It's not necessarily the mental disorder, but how we react to the experience.
Exactly. Thank you, Buddy. Also, if you have a history of substance abuse or if you've OD'd before and you want to try some psychedelic therapy, it's wise to go with a trusted friend or a therapist, somebody that can dole out your doses to you, right? Since you know yourself. Like, be honest with yourself, right? Let's see. And then you can always save a life with Narcan. And so I'm working and I'm hoping to get some Narcan products to donate it to the Psychedelic Club so that we can have our own supply we can hand out, and fentanyl test strips as
really
well.
important.
So we can have them at the club, at the Psychedelic Club meetings. And also I wanted to remind everybody of the Good Samaritan law, okay? A person is immune from arrest and prosecution for an offense if they report in good faith an emergency event to law enforcement officers, 911, or a medical provider. So if you come across somebody or if you're partying with somebody and they're overdosing, do not be afraid to contact help, okay? There is a law in place that protects you. So, you know, you can be a good Samaritan and get help.
And not get in trouble
and not
yourself.
get in trouble, yes.
But they might get in trouble.
Well, you know.
But their life could be saved.
For sure. No,
right?
I just like just to know how it works. Yeah.
Well, yeah. Well,
no, I'm not. I would definitely.
And sometimes that might be hard to like remember
Yes.
when that emotion's high.
Yes.
So it's good.
But
to
there
plant
is
that seed beforehand, just in case.
And the Good Samaritan law says if you remain at the scene, if you identify yourself and cooperate, and if there's an offense that arises from the same cause of events from which the emergency drug or alcohol overdose event arose. So that means, like, if you were part of it, like if it was a group thing, that you won't get in trouble for reporting it, is basically what that is saying, basically.
Yeah.
And this is from the Colorado Consortium. And then I got a little bit more data from the San Juan Basin Public Health about Colorado. There's actually, so in a positive light, there's actually zero data related to hallucinogen drug overdose deaths in Colorado. On the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment drug overdose dashboard. So I thought that was a really cool fact, right?
That is cool.
Fatal overdoses and serious adverse effects are rarely associated with typical use of commonly used psychedelics and dissociative drugs. So that's saying, like, if you're doing a regular microdose regimen, there's typically not going to be any adverse effects. There's not any reported. There's zero data on it, right? In the state of Colorado, which I believe is like, there's got to be a high use of psychedelics here, I feel like, right?
But I have been near and participatory in situations where people have been like out of their minds on psychedelics and suffering panic attacks and like needing to go to the hospital and like insisting on going to the hospital, and it's like, you know, like you shove their limp body out the door as you drive through, you know, and like they're good.
No, I'm gonna go into that.
No, but the idea being that you can go into panic attacks and things of that nature that wouldn't necessarily be recognized as a disorder or anything like that, but they would show up in these situations.
In the 2004 analysis of multiple studies, they estimated that psilocybin and LSD both have a safety ratio of 1,000 per 1,000, meaning the lethal dose of either drug is about 1,000 times larger than a person would typically take for non-medical use. So that's saying even if you're using recreationally, you would have to take a massive dose, right?
Massive.
And
It'd be hard to get your hands on.
Like
exactly. Yeah.
It'd be expensive too.
Some psychedelics that have been associated with a small number of deaths and serious adverse health effects are N-bombs, which I Googled it, and it's a synthetic hallucinogen that's similar to LSD. So, and right there, the keyword synthetic should red flag you, right? Anything synthetic, I wouldn't trust. And I don't know if I'm going to pronounce this correctly, but it's spelled Ibogaine.
Ibogaine.
And it's a naturally occurring psychoactive substance found in plants that are native to Central Africa.
And fair warning, like Ibogaine actually has like really serious adverse health effects in any kind of, like, if you step a little bit over the line on Ibogaine, it's kind of like fentanyl, like it'll jack your system for a while, and it could cause you to actually go to the hospital. So it's kind of interesting that it's actually being, you know, the decriminalization, like the talk
is protecting
that,
Ibogaine.
They're protecting Ibogaine, but
that
it's
means
probably
more
the
education
least,
needs
you
to
know,
be on it.
yeah, because they're saying like, oh, hey, these are cool, you know, like Ibogaine's like not cool.
And neither is PCP.
Well, some people
But it
have
can
really
help.
healed addiction through Ibogaine. I know
Absolutely,
people
yeah.
personally that have like transformed.
But
from
the
that.
amounts versus like, you know, beneficial effects and like serious adverse effects is like so small
Like,
that
it
you
should
really
be a
want somebody
shaman
who's like
with actual lineage. to administer.
Absolutely.
experience, understanding,
Absolutely.
and like knowing CPR on site kind of shit.
Absolutely. So evidence to date shows that fatal overdoses involving these substances are typically associated with taking very, very high doses, using combinations, especially alcohol, or being placed in excessive restraints while displaying unsafe behavior. So that, like,
Restraints are a bad idea.
Yes.
That's like
Always
the
a
worst.
bad idea.
Yes.
Did you watch some of the harm reduction webinar that I didn't record it, but
I haven't had a chance.
I sent we have
on my
access to all
list.
of that,
Yeah.
and they go into some really good harm reduction stuff.
Yeah.
And there aren't that many dangers with psychedelics in general, but you can, you know, he goes into the one. It's good.
So when people go into like serotonin toxicity, like, you know, their body temperature is going to elevate. So hypothermia